Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Alright, so looks like we got sound. Just need to get the rest of myself organized. But it is 9 o'clock, so that is go time. So let me just mute the audio on my side so I don't have to hear myself talk. And I just want to quickly get some music going, and then once I do that, we will begin. Spotify. Let's see what my my Monday morning playlist looks like. Nope, I don't want whatever you're trying to sell me, Spotify. Where is my Discovery Weekly? Alright, I'm gonna play some music on my end, which you guys won't hear. And all right, cool. We're gonna do some pixel art today. I want to build a new art pack, and I'm gonna try to build a little game this week. Because the big thing that I need to do is test out the latest build of Pixelvision 8. But on top of that, I haven't really made a fun little game in a while, and I want to start testing out this recording stuff to see if I can get a nice flow going where I can actually build out a little game, and while I work on it, cut it up into little videos and start using this all over the place. Because a big part of what I'll be doing at work is building out some more game demos and talking about making games, which is always fun. So let's get started here. I just want to look and see what oh cool, I do have an art pack thing. So let's do git pull. So lately I've been keeping all of my artwork and all my art projects into a single folder on Git, and then I can just sort of download them between. I have two different profiles on my computers. What we're gonna do is we have Super Zombie Runner, Reaper Boy, Pixelvision. We're gonna create a new project here, and in fact, I just want to take a look at. I feel like the Pixelvision 8 Runner project is done. So, Reaper Boy, there's still some stuff I'd like to do later on, but right now, I'm not terribly worried about it. And let's go ahead and create a new project, and we're going to call this NES Zombie Runner. And what we want to do is organize pixel art. We want to create art pack, and I think art pack is 2 words, and get art working in PV8. So let's see if we can achieve these goals today. We're on the clock. Let's get started. And now the other thing is that over the weekend, I built a new, I created a new build of Pixelvision 8. And, oops, I don't want to go into that computer. I want to go into shared. And what am I looking for? Transfer. So build 700 is looking pretty good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just drop build 700 in here. You can sort of see how much iteration I do. Each time I do like a new build, it increments, but these are like builds that I actually test independent outside of Unity. So, and if you don't know, Pixelvision 8 is a little game engine I've been working on for the past 2 years, which is sort of like a fantasy game console written in C#. And the idea is to sort of have fun making 8-bit games. And what we're going to do today is we're going to create, oh, this is going to be loud, sorry. Oh no, wait, maybe I muted it. Hopefully the mute stayed. Yeah, good, it was still muted. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna build artwork that's compatible with the NES template for Pixelvision 8. And this is sort of an interesting little thing that I built because it allows you to, while building a Nintendo game is a lot more involved, this little fantasy game console is really designed to allow you to it's designed basically to allow you to simulate or get very close to what a Nintendo would have been like. So a lot of that's just around the specs and whatnot. Let me I just want to see what I was working on last. So what are the things we need to do in order to get this working? So we're going to just start from basically from scratch and look at how I would design a Nintendo game on Pixel Vision 8. So the first thing that we do whenever we're looking at building a new game in Pixel Vision 8 is that we go to the new game tool, which is here, and we can pick any one of these templates. Now, over the weekend, what I want to make sure is actually happening. Oh, cool. Okay, so I've been working on some new systems like this Artaboy system. So like if I click new game here and I go to play, it's just going to be a very basic low-res black and white game. And each template has its own sort of set, excuse me, its own set of specs. So as you can see, we go in and I just entered the data file for this template, and here you can see that the resolution for an Artaboy is 128 by 64, and I've disabled the draw calls, and this is sort of what you have to work with. So let's quit out of here. And we're going to go and create a brand new Nintendo system template. Or more importantly, we're going to create a new Nintendo game template. And let me get rid of this. And so, long story short, all the tools you need to build games are basically built into Pixel Vision 8. So there's a sprite editor, there's a color editor, and there's a tile map editor. There's nothing here in the tile map to see. There's also some sound and music editors. And what my goal with this was that while I would love everyone to be able to build little games with this, I really have more selfish things where this is a tool that I built for myself to build the games that I like to build. So let's get started, right? We're gonna create a NES style game. So we're gonna click the family template, which is selected by default, and we can see down here the system specs. As you switch through each of the templates, you'll see each of the different specs. So for the family system, we're going to be dealing with a 256 by 240 resolution. I don't know why the colors are off here. There's about 55 colors, and then per sprite PS is 3. There's 3 colors per sprite basically. And then what we're going to do is there's also the number of tiles that we can have, or sorry, the total number of sprites. We can have up to 1024 sprites and a maximum of 64 on the screen at any given time. We have a rather large tile map area, and then sound channels and music and blah, 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 blah. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a new game. And whenever we create a new template, if we just play it, you're just going to see this standard sort of, the game is empty, and you can basically hit Control 1 in order to exit and go back into the editor. So here are all the files that make up our game. Now, there really aren't any sprites. This is just a sort of placeholder. So if you don't have the files like music, for example, it creates a placeholder file for it. Here we go into the sprites, you'll see now we have, this is just loading in the font as the default sprites. And as we go ahead and add more, sprites into the project, you'll see that the fonts are actually loaded last. So they're sort of like, they go wherever there's room in the in sprite memory. So, and then these are the colors that we have to work with. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and let's create, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new folder inside of here. So let me just quit out of terminal. And now if we click on the save icon, it's going to take us back into our game folder. And this is the root of the workspace. The workspace is what Pixel Vision 8 creates. Now there's a sandbox folder, and this is where we actually work on files when we're playing a game. Now there is a games folder where you can put saved games. There's a demos folder that shows you all the demos that are included in Pixel Vision 8. I was just double checking to see that other things. Yeah, when I added Reaper Boy in, which is a game I did for the last Ludum Dare. All right, so what we're gonna do is I've already customized this, but we're gonna take a copy of this workspace folder and take a look at where on our system this is located. So here we're going to go into my computer, we're going to go to workspace, and you'll see here we have a sandbox folder, and this is all the files that we're seeing whenever we click on the save tool. So you'll see, like I said, there are things like music that isn't in here because these are just placeholders, so that if you did click on music, it would take you into the music tool and you could start creating music and playing back music and not have to worry about it. If I hit save, let's just save that file right now, all of a sudden you'll see we've now created a music file. And this is just a JSON file, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So let's go back into here, and now that we sort of understand this very high level, like what the sandbox folder is and how we sort of see it inside of Pixel Vision 8, let's go and create a new folder here, and we're just going to call this resources. So while we can create folders on the desktop, and they will show up here inside of the editor, Pixel Vision 8 is very limited into what kind of files it'll actually let you work with. But the reason why I wanted to create this resources folder is I need a staging ground for all the artwork. So if I go into projects, art packs, and let's look for Ness Zombie Runner. So I've been working with a really great pixel artist on Twitter, EeveSomePX. So it's EEVE. Actually, his Twitter handle is, let me take a look at it real quick, just so I get it right. His Twitter handle is SOMEPX. Somepix. Actually, I don't know why I'm like blanking here, but I can just go twitter.com/somepx. So here's who I'm working with on this little pixel art set. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take, if you were watching, well, not last week because I was away at GDC, but if you were watching 2 weeks ago when I started my stream back up, I was building a zombie runner. And what Evie and I have been working on is making a Ness version of that runner. So these are all the artwork that he's sort of created over the past, like, I guess about like 2 weeks of us collaborating, going back and forth. And what we're going to do is we're going to convert this artwork into, first off, into a sprite sheet that we can use for Pixel Vision 8. But then we're going to work on, oh, that's what we should add here as well, is create sprites for Sprite Builder. So in essence, what we're trying to do is in Pixel Vision 8, there's a thing called the Sprite Builder. And what the Sprite Builder allows you to do is create a JSON file that you can use in your game for combining sprites. And I'll sort of walk through how that works a little bit later. Now, so what I've done is I've just taken the raw artwork that he's given me and I've copied this over into a folder inside of our project. So now whenever we, if we were to go here, like let's take a look, and I'm going to close out the original source. So if I was to go and archive this game right now and just save it, well, right now it's untitled, so that wasn't very smart of me. Let's go and give it a name. We're going to call this Ness Zombie Runner. And we're going to lock, actually, I want to unlock the specs, and I want to add an overscan of 1. So this overscan is going to be really important. Hey, Mohammed, glad to see you're a big fan. By the way, I turned off the where you can see people's chats on the stream because I just wanted to I want to capture this and cut these up into little clips later, so I wanted it to be a little bit cleaner. But there's some people who are chatting, and I'll sort of try to talk back as much as I can. So I set the overscan to 1 on the X and the Y position. That basically means that the right hand side, 1 column, which is 8 pixels wide, will be removed, and one column on the bottom by 8 pixels high will be removed. And overscan is sort of important, and we'll see it a little bit later when we're building out the game. But on the Nintendo, if a sprite actually moved past 256 along the x-axis, it sort of wraps around. And I can illustrate this by looking into if we look at one of the demos real quick. If we look at the demos and we look at Draw Sprites demo, here you'll see along the x-axis and the y-axis, the more you increase the x or y value, the sprite actually wraps back around. And one of the things we're going to do with the overscan is we're going to make sure that the side of the screen is sort of cropped, just like old CRT monitors used to do, so that we don't see the sprite looping when it's not ready to. So that being said, we now have, I went through and I sort of saved this project out. Like if we go back into the data file, we'll see here that we have everything sort of saved and everything is configured the way that we want. I've saved it. So now if we were to archive this project real quick, just as a point of reference, and look at the games folder, we'll see that there's a NES Zombie Runner PV8 file. Now you can actually go and rename PV8 files into zips, and we'll tell it to use zip, and we'll open this up. And now you'll see inside of this folder is the resources folder and our original sprites. So anything, I'm actually going to delete this, and there was an untitled game. Let's move these guys to the trash. Anything inside of our sandbox folder, when we archive it or save it, will get copied over to the games folder when we're done. So this is important because it allows us to go through and create a staging area for all of our sprites. So if you're just tuning in, what we're going to do is we're going to create some artwork for a Nintendo-style game in Pixelvision 8. And I'm using EV's Sum PX's sprites that he created for me so that we can take a look at how it is to, whoops, I hit the mic. Take a look at how it is to build a sort of NES-style game. So the next thing we're going to do is let's just open up Photoshop and figure out how we can lay this stuff out. Now, it's relatively straightforward to get sprites into Pixelvision 8. What I want to do first is, I don't think there is a sprites PNG file yet. So what we're going to do is let's create a new project, and now we're going to do a little bit of math, right? So if we look at Pixelvision 8 here and we go into the sprite tool, the way that it sort of organizes sprites is that it organizes them into what's called pages of memory. So here it's 16 across by 16 down, meaning there's 256 sprites on a single page. Now you'll see the ID is 255 because the first sprite is obviously 0. And the last of these 4 pages is going to be 1024. So what we want to do is, if we just do some quick math here, a sprite is 8 pixels wide, multiplied by 16 is 128. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a 128 by, multiply this by 4, because there's 4 pages, 512. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the background color real quick. And we're going to make this magenta, which is FF00FF. And the reason why I'm making this magenta is that while you can use transparent colors for the background, Pixelvision 8 looks for a very specific color that it calls the mask color, and it will ignore this color whenever it's drawing pixel data onto the screen, and it acts as if it's transparent. So I use magenta just because it's so obnoxiously bright that it's really easy to see. And actually, I want to see if we can get this doesn't do index colors, which sort of stinks, but that's fine. We don't need to worry about that. The artwork's already created. So let's create this. And as you can see, if I zoom in, I've already gone ahead, and if you go into Photoshop's preferences and go to guides, grids, and slices, I've gone ahead and I've created a grid line every 8 pixels. So a lot of times I'll do something like this where it's 16 with a subdivision of 1. Actually, I want to make the subdivision of, wait, if I zoom in, oh no, okay. So that just turned into 16 by 16 which is usually a good size for sprites. But what we really need to pay attention to is make this a subdivision of 2 and hit OK. It's probably a little hard to see on the stream, but basically what I've done is I've created 16 by 16 blocks, and inside of it are 8 by 8 inner tiles. So the solid gray line is going to be like larger sprite area, and then the inner dotted line are going to be the individual sprites that make up a single sprite. And this is important because on the Nintendo and these old 8-bit systems, sprites were always 8 by 8, but you can have a much larger graphic in your game that could be 16 by 16 or 32 by 32, depending on the limitations of your system. So the next thing I want to do is we're going to take all this artwork that Eevee's created, and we're going to dump it into Photoshop. So now, when we do this, I'm just going to hit return. I don't know what just happened. I don't know why this stuff is blurry. All right, Photoshop, what are you doing today? All right, let's try it this way. Let's just open up each of these. And then we'll move this off to the side. Let's get rid of this panel for right now. Actually, I do need that panel. I need the layers. Let's get rid of everything. And I don't know, something was blurry. So I'm not particularly sure why. Oh, one thing I want to do real quick. When we copy this stuff over in Photoshop, what's going to happen is that it's automatically going to crop the transparency. I can't remember if there's a way to... Well, no, I want to get out of this mode. I can't remember in Photoshop if there's a way to actually select it where it doesn't trim. I don't know. They've changed so much in Photoshop these days. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this other green, which I use for masking, and we're just going to use it as the background layer, just so we can see where the real pixels are, because these guys are lined up in a very specific way. Are the X and Y positions not integer pixels? Well, that retro wire, that shouldn't affect Photoshop. I don't know. Sometimes when Photoshop imports pixel art, it sort of has a conniption. But there's a very specific reason why I'm using Photoshop, which will become apparent later on in the stream. So, sorry, I was just getting a message. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Apple key and Shift and hit C, which basically will copy both of these layers together and paste it. And the reason why I did this again is because I wanted to be able to line this stuff up specifically because Eevee and I, what we did was there's a lot of math that's sort of involved in creating a Nintendo game because you have to maximize the sprites. And one of the things that we sort of did was, while this guy takes up 3 sprites across by 4 sprites down, we worked really hard to make sure that we weren't using all these sprites. And Pixel Vision 8 is going to automatically clean this up for us, but you'll see that, like, if I zoom in a little bit better here, across the board, and I'll delete this so you can see. What we did was we made sure that we only used the sprites that we, at a bare minimum, needed, right? So what that means is that, like in this case here, this guy is missing 3 sprites, and to take a step back and sort of explain how the Nintendo works. You're only allowed 64 sprites on the screen at a given time, right? So every single sprite counts. So by taking out sprites and just making them transparent, we're really only using, so something that would have been, what? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't know why I actually did that. I could do 3 times 4, but all right, so that's 12. right? So we have 12 sprites. We're now actually using 11, 10, 9. So we're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sprites. And while it doesn't seem that important over time, that's going to mean that we're going to have, when we show the player, we're going to have 3 additional sprites available to use somewhere else, right? And then, that also means that we're going to have, we can use that in the bad guy or anywhere else, right? So right now, let's delete this because we've already imported this. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to lay out all of, well, let's get the idols together. And then let's get the female idol. So I'm going to make a new layer behind it. I'm going to fill that layer with this masking green for right now. And right now, I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that that we're not filling this up correctly, because Pixelvision 8, what Pixelvision 8 is going to do is that when it goes through and it imports sprites, it's going to automatically find duplicates and not import them and share them across other sprites, and then it's also going to clean up this this sprite sheet for us, and you'll sort of see. So I'm just going to sort of rough this out, but along the way, what I'm going to do is I just want to illustrate how important it is that we're actually cutting out these sprites so that you can sort of get a good visual of what that looks like, and also for my own self-edification as I make sure that our artwork is adhering to the confines that we had set. Now, some cool things. So, okay, I wouldn't say it's a cool thing, but some things you may notice is that, like, all right, let's take a look at this foot, for example, here, right? Now, it's expensive to have a single sprite that simply has 3 pixels in it, right? And, from time to time, it's actually going to happen. But what you'll notice is that this is actually repeated between both of these people, right? And even this hand, so now this sprite here has 2 pixels and 3 pixels, and it's repeated here and here. And while it is sort of wasteful to have that, this repetition will allow us to get the most out of that individual sprite. And you'll see Pixelvision 8 is going to compress this down really well. So Eevee did a really good job. We had a lot of back and forth over this, and it's mostly because adhering to the Nintendo spec for drawing sprites is super, super like pain in the butt. So let's close this out, and now let's take a look at I believe there was a jump animation, and this one, what I think I want to do is I might just expand out this canvas a little bit. Let's just make this 256 by 256. Yeah, that's fine. Proceed. What I'm going to try to, what I sort of want to do is, I want to get it to the point of where the first player is sort of laid out and the second player is laid out, and then we'll let Pixelvision 8 optimize this. So this is the player jump animations. Whoops, I need to bring the mask over. So, all right, we'll paste this over. So the other limitations that we have here are really going to be, I'm just going to do this here to show masking off the different animation blocks. So the other thing is that these sprites adhere to each one of these sprites should only have 3 colors. So 1, 2. So I'm already looking at this and I'm seeing that there's actually 4 colors in there. So that's something that we're going to have to try to figure out how to get around. Again, the Nintendo was incredibly limited, and while Eevee and I were going back and forth over this stuff, I didn't want to limit his creativity because this stuff gets complicated. So even though I'm noticing now, and we were going sort of back and forth, even though I'm noticing that there's too many colors in the sprites, we'll figure out how we want to go back and fix that. So let's not save this. Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna take a look at where's female player jump. This is the problem. The Nintendo was a really, really limited system, right? So people sort of take it for granted. They just think that, oh, you know, yes, the Nintendo supported, really it supported 4 colors per sprite. But the problem is that one of those colors has to be transparent. So let's, and this is also why I'm going through and doing this. My goal for today, usually on Mondays, I like to do some pixel art and have a good start for the week. The goal is to just get this as close as possible to a Nintendo. Now, there are some things we can do to simplify this. We might have to make this brown, this light brown, or this dark brown on the strap. Since the hand comes into this area, we might have to make this brown strap the same as that. We'll take a look at how Pixel Vision 8 tells us that things are working on the import, and then we'll go from there and clean it up. All right, so now we have, let's take the zombie run. And I mean, one of the things that I did with Pixel Vision 8, the way I designed it, is that while we could stay very close to, we could stay very close to the Nintendo specs, we could also break it. We don't have to actually follow that. So, and there's been some really great games that have done that, like Shovel Knight, which sort of adheres to the aesthetic of the NES, but it breaks the some of the more constraining limitations. All right, so that's their zombie. I think these things look really good, by the way. It's, you know, you lose a little bit of fidelity when going towards the NES aesthetic. It's super hard to nail this. All right, let's just move all of these down, and we'll make room for the player's run animation, which means my grid's not going to work. That's fine. What we can do is, since Pixel Vision 8 is going to clean this up for us, we can add some space just so we can see the difference between where the sprite animations are. All right, so for the running, what we want to do is let's just double check where we're going to remove sprites from. So like, let's talk a second about, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just double checking that the player's pixels don't go in a certain area, and I just want to see per sprite what we're losing, right? And what we can optimize for. And like, the reason that this is critical, right? When we go into counting individual sprites is, let's take one scenario here, right? Let's look at this player's idle animations versus their running animations, right? And what you'll notice that's sort of interesting about why I'm spending a lot of time focusing on taking away, like, what, so for the idle, I'm just trying to make this a little bigger so the kids at home can see it. We've taken away 3 sprites, right? In the run animation, we've only taken away 2 sprites, and that's fine. But let's say, for example, when we stop running and we go back to the idle animation, this is really where like the player is sort of panting and breathing. Let's say we wanted to add sweat that came off of the forehead, right? Like little pixels that just like spewed out that, you know, showed sweat coming off. Since we've now removed, since we now have one extra sprite area that we didn't have when we were running, we can use that area to show that animation. And that's really what's interesting about building for the Nintendo, is trying to manage every little pixel, how many sprites it takes to render something, and what you can do in order to optimize that, right? So, okay, so we got the player down. Let's close that out, and then we're going to work on the last set of sprites, which is going to be the female character running. And let's put this here. All right, so we're going to move this over, and I'm just going to go through and cut out the thing. Retro Rewind is saying, looks like there's 2 more animations in the 4th frame. Yeah, there are. There are. You're right. Good call. Whoops. Yeah, and I'm just going to rough this out. I mean, technically, so you're always going to be constrained by the maximum number of sprites it takes to animate. So, well, we did save 2 here, because the average of the sprites that we're using is going to be, what, 10? We always just have to factor in that the player is always going to be 10 sprites as its maximum. So the good news is that when, you know, if there are less sprites, then there's a little bit better performance. But that's actually negligible in Pixel Vision 8. So let's see if we can just, we'll go through and we'll crop out the last of these sprites and take a look at where we are. So I think right now the biggest problem is the biggest problem was in these idle animations, and we'll have to figure out a good solution for how we can fix this. I might just have to have Evie go back and I might have to have him go back and clean this up, because I was very specific when we were building out the running to make sure that we didn't have one, two, yeah, like here it's 4 colors. Nintendo, why do you make everything so hard? All right, so why don't we just do this? Let's save this as sprites PSD. I'm gonna go save this in the right folder, which should be the workspace, sandbox, resources. I don't know why Mac decided to give me the smallest screen ever. All right, we're gonna call this sprites PNG, and we're gonna save out the layers for it, right? And what I want to do is, how do I want to save this out? I sort of like this look, like, well, you know what, I'll just go back at some point and I can always recreate this maybe. I don't know. I was just thinking that I really like, let's just save this out as, I have a feeling we're going to have to rework these sprites anyways, so I'm not terrible. I just wanted to save out. I like this, the way that this visually looks, so you can sort of see where the sprites are versus the transparency and stuff like that. Workspace, sandbox, mask example. All right, so we can close this out, and I'm going to now merge all these together by hitting Command E and have all them linked together. And then I'm going to pull out my wand. Oh, let me get the wand, magic wand, and let's get rid of anti-ease. Set the tolerance to 0, and we're going to select all the green and delete it. And this is going to give us our core sprites for the game. So, sorry, Alez was saying something. Actually, for sprite optimization, whenever there's only 1 pixel on a tile, I tend to remove it or move it. Yeah, I know. A lot of times, like there are some things that I would do to clean this up, but since this is the fine line that I've been trying to get with Pixel Vision 8, is that since we're actually not building a real Nintendo game, we don't have to like really micromanage that stuff. And that's sort of like it's about having fun versus being 100% authentic. So let's go ahead. We're going to save this out into the sandbox folder as sprites.png. And now if we go back into Pixel Vision 8 and hit refresh, we're going to see our sprites. And now what we're actually seeing is it looks like there's it looks like it's missing some colors. And I have a feeling that it's just because these colors don't match up to the Nintendo palette. So we're going to take a minute and sort of figure out how to fix that. Because the other thing that we want to do is create a palette. Now, it looks like the tan and this yellow aren't matching up. So these are sort of easy fixes. And this is the kind of stuff that you'd probably wind up having to do anyways if you have like your own art or whatnot. So in Pixel Vision 8, it's super sensitive to the palette, right? So here is our palette, and we got to make sure that these colors match up 100%, or Pixel Vision 8 isn't able to parse the color data. So let's come in here, and I already opened up the colors PNG file, which represents all the colors that the Nintendo, at least this version, the Nintendo displays. And we're going to go through each one, and let's do this. We're going to put this here. Actually, hold on. I'm going to make this, I want to just, original size. Let's do percent. Let's do this by 800%. 200%? Sure. Hold on. 200%. And we want to do nearest neighbor. And let's just paste this in here. Where did this come from? Delete that. All right, so now we at least have the palette here. And I'm just going to merge the palette into the same layer as our artwork. And the reason I'm doing that is because as I come through here and we start selecting colors, we just want to make sure that the colors exist in the palette. So as you can see here, this blue showed up there, this black showed up here, and this tan is not actually showing up anywhere. And so what we're going to do is let's figure out another sort of color that's close enough to it. I believe it is this color, and I'm just going to replace it. And now if I use the magic wand again, we should get that color. Perfect. So let's go through, let's look at the green. So the green shows up, the hand is showing up good. And let's look at this brown. This brown is showing up, this blue is showing up, and this lighter tan is not showing up. So let's go find a similar color. I'm going to go with this, which might be a little off, but that's close enough. So this just happens from time to time. So whenever you're creating the pixel art, sometimes the art you get either back from the artist or if you save it in a different format, the RGB values don't match up 100%, and it's super subtle, right? You might not even notice it. But the best thing to do is open up either open up Pixel Vision 8's color PNG and then use that as a reference, or create your own colors and just save them back as the color PNG. Usually, all the color PNG file is a list of colors, and each pixel is a single, or each color is a single pixel in this thing. So let's close this out so we can have a little bit more space. And now what I want to make sure is, right, so now if I go through and I select all the colors here that make up, what's missing? The green. Okay, so now I've selected all the colors for this, and we now have all the colors that make up this guy. So next we're going to go and we're going to clean up the female runner, and we're going to select her shirt, which should be this purple, right? Even when I replace it, it's I can't even tell the difference, but it's just very subtly off. All right, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good, good. All right, so let's see here. So this gray is right here. Oh, that was darker than it should have been. Nope. I wonder where that dark gray came from. Oops. All right, we're gonna have to use this gray then. And this dark, this really dark. Yeah, I don't know where this came from. All right, well, we're gonna have to come up with something that's similar. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to make this color a lighter gray. And then we're gonna have to make this darker gray here. All right, so I mean that's sort of close enough. Like I'm gonna send this back to Evie and get his thoughts on what I wind up doing to clean this up, but that's sort of where we are. And let's get this yellow for the hair. All right, so we'll save that out. All right, so I think all the colors now for her are now there. Cool. So, what do you mean optimize the palette color? Elise, oh, there's a comment about optimizing the palette color, but I'll take a look at this. All right, let's see. This orange should be right here. It's a little bit off. Oh no, here's another orange. Yeah, that's closer. Okay, cool. This dead flesh is that. All the black is the same. And then this blue. So what is that blue? Nope. Trying to figure out where this blue is. Well, we'll do this one. No, I like that like teal look. Let's see, where... I just gotta see a color and see what color... Whoops, let me merge these layers together so that I can select it. Is it not this? There we go, that was the color. So now, because there are so many colors that are too close. Well, that was the Nintendo had, I thought about doing some custom palettes. I might talk to Cass Pixel about that because it might be better to, you're right, we could optimize this, but those are like technically the Nintendo colors. So I was trying to get it, like, you know, there's a fine line between how do we want it to be perfectly like a Nintendo or just close enough? All right, so now what we've done is these should all be matched up now with the colors that we had before, or with the real colors. Let's go ahead and we're going to resave this sprites PNG. And we're going to hit refresh. And now you can see all of our sprites are showing up. And it's sort of optimized them. So it's taken all of this and it's created 248 sprites. And then the next page should just be sort of the text and everything. So let's go, and I'm just going to really quickly log my Pomodoro. So here we've organized the art, and we're working on getting the artwork working in Pixel Vision 8, which I say we've already done. So that's what we've completed so far on our first Pomodoro of the Monday morning. All right, so if you're just tuning in, what we're doing is we're trying to create Nintendo Nintendo-esque sprites inside of Pixelvision 8. We're using one of the Nintendo templates. Pixelvision 8 is just a fantasy game console that I've written. And what I'm looking through and what I'm noticing is that this is actually working out pretty well. I'm trying to find where the idle animations went. Because what I'm looking to see is if there's... it's really hard to tell, but I can't see if there's any place where in the idle animations we've run out of colors. Everything seems sort of correct. So one thing that we're going to do is we can go here and let's well we could change the background. Like if we made this black, then they're just going to disappear. We're not going to be able to see them. We'll leave the background color as is. Right now it's still black. We'll go and we'll change that. So, all right, we now have all these out. And I was talking about earlier that Pixelvision 8 is going to optimize. You'll see Pixelvision 8 has gone through and it's found the duplicate sprites and it's sort of cropped them out where we don't need them. I know these things where the sprite is like just a few pixels here is sort of annoying. But again, since this isn't a real Nintendo, I'm not terribly worried about it. And if I'm looking at memory, even if these are the main characters and they take up this one page, it's still pretty good. I need to send Evie a message real quick because I want to get why is my keyboard not working? I have like the most convoluted setup ever for... Alright, so my keyboard on my tablets doesn't feel like working. Oh, here we go. Now it's working. Can I also get the... I just... Yeah, is there an audio? Are you guys hearing an audio problem? Let me here I can let me exit out of the let me exit out of this thing. I'll take a look at on Twitch and see if the audio is bad. Twitch. I'll just load this up on my tablet.